Picture this. A parent is hosting a lively party. The house is full of guests, kids are running around, and the family dog is right in the middle of everything. Seems like a perfect celebration until something goes terribly wrong. Amid the chaos, the dog, overwhelmed and unsupervised, bites a guest. What started as a joyful gathering has now turned into a stressful and regrettable situation. In this episode of the podcast, we'll unpack this story, which happened to a client of mine living in San Francisco, to understand what went wrong and, more importantly, how you can prevent something like this from happening at your own events. We will be exploring how dogs react to busy social environments, especially when they're not used to them, the impact of parent overwhelm on managing kids and pets during parties, and some practical strategies to keep everyone, dogs, kids, and guests, safe and happy at parties or other kinds of social events. So, whether you're planning on hosting a holiday get together, birthday party, or just hanging out with friends, this episode will hopefully equip you with the tools you're going to need to navigate these situations with confidence and peace of mind. So let's dig in a little bit. And I'd like to start by talking about what went wrong in this scenario. So before I met with this client, she reached out to me and told me that they were hosting a party and their livestock guardian dog in San Francisco um, bit one of their guests. And she confessed that she and her partner had had quite a bit to drink at this event. And I'm not going to spend time bashing people who enjoy substances because that's not really the focus of this episode. But I have to mention the fact that when we're not entirely focused or able to concentrate on the events going on around us, we're less able to manage the situation. So it was really great that she confessed that. I think it's really an important piece of the puzzle, but I don't think it's the only piece of the puzzle. And we're going to talk about other factors that went into what could have gone wrong in this situation. So, first of all, the dog bit one of the guests, and that happened partly because the dog wasn't being adequately managed during the social event. So, first, we have to talk a little bit about the fact that this was a livestock guardian dog. And we have to point out the obvious that not all dogs are the same, and certain dogs are bred to do certain jobs. And a guardian dog likes to protect the nest, right? They like to prevent unwanted visitors from being around. And the fact that they lived in San Francisco is an important piece of this puzzle as well, because there are a lot of triggers environmentally. They had garbage service many days during the week, not just once, like many of us experience where we live. There's a lot of noise, delivery drivers, honking, traffic, other dogs patrolling the area or on walks. And so this dog is kind of always living in a triggered state. And so the fact that they brought in a bunch of people that the dog was unfamiliar with wasn't helping that dog to behave in its ideal way. So that's kind of an important piece of the puzzle, too. So, also, of course, the dog wasn't being managed. The dog was just kind of in the mix with everybody else. There were children running around. There were other adults and some people that the dog didn't know or had never met before. And they were hoping for the best, the parents were. They were a really kind of easygoing, free-flowing family, and they didn't really want to manage a lot of things. They just wanted to have fun. And while I appreciate that sentiment, it's also really important that we set our dog up for success so that no accidents can happen, which could cost the dog their life. If the dog bit somebody who was a child, caused a lot of damage, or bit someone who was litigious in nature, that dog might not have a very long lifespan. And so it's really important that people who host events, whether you're hosting a Girl Scout trip or a birthday party or any other kind of social gathering at your house, that you take steps to manage where the dog is and where the people are, and does everybody have a safe space? Okay, so what else went wrong? The parents were focused on hosting the party. They were having fun, as you should when you're hosting a party, but they were not as aware as they could have been. They were trying to attend to their guests' needs. They were enjoying food and beverage themselves. And so they weren't really focused on the dog. They were focused on the event itself. So that's definitely a huge contributing factor here. They weren't really noticing the dog's level of overwhelm during this event. So they weren't really noticing the specific triggers that were influencing their dog's behavior. So the fact that there was unpredictable child behavior, kids who are at parties are having a great time. They're running around, they fall down, they scream, they yell, they laugh. Maybe they're throwing balls or playing with other toys that are making noise. Maybe they're bringing in toys to the house that weren't there before. So these can all be triggers for a dog. Unfamiliar faces, especially given that this dog was a livestock guardian dog. A guardian breed tends to not love the fact that strangers are in their space. And then because it was a party and there are people all over the place, it's really easy to miss any kinds of warning signs that the dog might have given before the bite actually happened. And so those are all some of the issues that led to this type of situation. So what I'd like to do now is dive in a little bit deeper into understanding dog behavior. I want to really help you all who are listening to this or watching it to kind of understand how you can host an event, a social gathering yourself, and be more successful. So here are some things that I think are pretty important that we all need to do to set ourselves and our dogs up for success. And a lot of that means that we need to be prepared in advance. Okay. And one of the things that I really like families to do when they have a dog, regardless of whether they're hosting events or not, is it really helps to understand a dog's behavior, because then we can prevent levels of discomfort with our dogs around our children. Now, we also need to understand our children's behavior as well, right? We want our kids to feel safe around our dogs, but we also want our dogs to feel safe around our kids. And those two things are really important towards family harmony when we're trying to raise dogs and kids together. So the first thing that we need to kind of understand is how our dog, in particular, this dog, right? Because every dog reacts differently, how this particular dog that's yours reacts to different things. So how do they react to crowds? How do they react to unpredictable child behavior? How do they react to noises, perhaps noises they're unfamiliar with? Maybe noises they are familiar with. And do any of them tend to pile on to each other to cause more stress? So, for example, if the garbage truck happened that morning and then somebody lit off some fireworks and then maybe your smoke alarm went off, do each of those things impact your dog? And then do they impact your dog when they're all happening in the same day? We call this trigger stacking, right? It's kind of the concept of the straw that broke the camel's back. And then how does your dog react to unfamiliar people? What if they see unfamiliar people outside of the house? What if they see unfamiliar people inside of the house? Does it matter where those people go inside the house? How close they get to the dog? Are these all things that impact how your dog responds? We also need to be able to recognize signs of stress or discomfort that you should look for in your dog. So, for example, when your dog is uncomfortable, do they start yawning? That's a really common one. Do they flick their tongue or lick their lips? Do they look away? Do you see the whites around their eyes? Do they become stiff if they're alarmed or nervous about something, right? So unless you can really recognize these signs of discomfort in your dog, it makes it really difficult to notice if something during a party or social event is a trigger for your dog, and you can't step in and intervene if you don't know what to look for. And we also need to just make sure that we understand that if we're in an overwhelming environment, such as hosting a party or other type of social gathering, even if you bring your dog to your kids' soccer games, for example, we need to understand if we're focused on other things, such as the event or hosting or things of that nature, it can be really hard for your dog to feel supported by you, especially if historically you're the person who's made them feel safe. because we're busy doing other things. So these are just things that we need to consider. We have to be able to understand our dog's behavior in order to keep everyone safe. Now, I have to address parent overwhelm, right? This is huge. I'm a parent. You're likely a parent or a dog professional who works with parents. And we just have to own this fact that parenting is really hard and it's really easy to get overwhelmed. And when we're at a social event and lots of different factors are begging for our attention, it's really easy to have a lapse in supervision. And then we add alcohol or other substances into the mix, and we're not able to supervise as carefully as we need to if we are being responsible for the safety of our dog and of our guests. So we have to address the reality of what juggling looks like, right? When you're hosting a party, other children, multiple pets, whatever the circumstances are. When we're juggling, we're not giving all of our attention to certain things that might require it, right? Um, Another thing that's important is that a lot of folks, including this client in particular, are a rose-colored glasses type of person, right? They just want to hope that things will be fine, right? And when we wear rose-colored glasses and just hope for the best, we're missing out on some proactive strategies that we can be taking to prevent accidents, right? So it's a really common mistake to just assume everything's going to be okay, and therefore we don't take any action to make sure that things will actually be okay. Because in most circumstances, hoping for the best is not going to be an effective strategy. Okay, from here, we need to talk about some management strategies because I think it's really important that we think about all of the things that we can do to be successful and to set our dogs up to be successful. And maybe if your dog's not successful, we can at the very least prevent your dog from making a mistake. So preparing before an event is really important. So first we have to assess if your dog should even be there in the first place, right? So what do I mean by that? Well, there are ways to separate your dog from all of the activities of the party. That could be behind a closed door. Your dog could have a cozy bed, some really yummy chews to work on. In some cases, certain dogs benefit from behavioral modification medicines. If your dog is a really stressed dog, really overwhelmed, super anxious dog, you may have some medications in your arsenal already. We would call these situational medications. I'm not a vet. I can't recommend what types of medications you use with your dog. So I recommend that you talk to your vet or your veterinary behaviorist to discuss options that could help your dog. Many dogs don't need things like this. They just need structure and they need support so that they don't make a mistake. But in many cases, dogs benefit from just being separated or apart from the party in general. And in many cases, it's better if we just send your dog somewhere else for the night. So maybe you have a good friend where your dog is comfortable having a sleepover. Or maybe you have somebody who boards dogs occasionally, or a boarding facility that you trust where the dog can just not be at the house. Then you can live your best life as a host. You don't have to worry about any shenanigans between your party guests and your dog. And you can really focus on the part of hosting a party that you enjoy the most, as opposed to worrying about how you're going to manage your dog during that event. So that's something you need to really think about. We also need to think about how you can set boundaries for your guests ahead of time. So that might mean when you send out your invitation, you send out explicit instructions. Hey, I really need you to ignore my dog. Please don't pet my dog. Please don't stare at my dog. Make sure your kids don't get on the floor near my dog when he's on his bed, right? If my dog is resting, I'd like your kids to stay away from your dog. So whatever that may be, it really can help to communicate your expectations in advance. And then during the event, it really helps to assign a responsible adult to managing the dog. So maybe that means somebody has the dog on a leash and clips the leash around their waist, for example, during the party. Or maybe we have somebody who's kind of on patrol managing or limiting interactions between the dog and the guests, or especially between the dog and children, right? So you could even hire a babysitter. I'm putting that in air quotes because maybe the babysitter is really a dog sitter or someone who's really sole focus during this event is to make sure the dog's needs are being met. Maybe they take the dog outside on a walk if the dog looks overwhelmed. Maybe they make sure the dog isn't sneaking food off of the coffee table or whatever else. But really focusing on how to set the dog up for success. Now, I realize that that's a privileged thing to ask, right? That means that you maybe have the financial resources to bring someone in to help your dog. Maybe it means you have the financial resources to board your dog elsewhere. And if that's too hard for you, and maybe everyone wants to be having fun at the party and not focusing on the dog, then we need to think about safe places where the dog can be during the event where they're not being overwhelmed. So I think that can be really, really important. Now, how do we empower you? How do we empower parents or your clients, if you're a dog pro listening to this, for success during social events? First, we have to acknowledge the fact that parents often host social events when they're having children, right? You might be part of a parenting group and you might take turns who hosts play dates with maybe mommy and me kinds of activities or daddy and me activities. Maybe your kids are in the scouts or they're in 4-H as my children were. And 4-H clubs, we often had a place to meet, but sometimes we hosted 4-H meetings at each other's houses. And that was really fun. But that means that kids that your dogs might not have met before are coming over. And we don't know if those children are going to treat your dog respectfully. Unfortunately, a lot of children treat your dog the way they treat their own dog, and that might not be appropriate for your dog. So, setting up plans and boundaries to accommodate your dog's needs are part of any kind of preparation for events that parents may host, right? Delegate responsibilities during social events. Make sure that your dog's needs are cared for. Make sure that you understand how to read your dog. Are they stressed? Are they relaxed? Are they able to have fun at the event? And if they're not enjoying themselves, they don't really need to be super involved. So, being proactive with how to manage your dog during events can prevent unwanted outcomes, such as what my client experienced with her dog who bit one of her guests. I know I just threw a lot at you, but I know that being social is an important part of being a parent, whether you're hosting a birthday party or 4-H club or some sort of party to celebrate your sports team. These are all things that are often part of life when you are a parent and you have a dog. And I wanted to hopefully share some tips to help you be successful in hosting these kinds of social events when you're parenting kids and dogs at the same time. I hope you found this helpful. Take care. Bye-bye.